This is a creative piece from ScribersHive Europe, giving the youth a voice that matters.
So what does community mean to you? I wonder what that means to you. For me, it means being part of a people that actually care what you do and what you are involved in, and keep an eye on you and help you when you're down. So in a way, it's like an extended family. But I'm curious, what community means to you individually.
To me, I feel like community means being together, doing things together as a whole, and making sure you give back as well. To give to someone and to give back is really important in community, and it shows that you care about that person, not just, but genuinely care about that person. So to me, I feel like a community, because there's different types of communities. You have communities, but people actually don't really get along with each other in that community. But then you have communities where everyone has to chip in, or else it falls apart. Do you know what I mean? So I really believe in the latter part of it, the positive community, having people together. I think that's really important, and that's what makes a community thrive in a sense.
So I'm living in the middle of an ex-mining community where the mines have shut down, and the community has struggled over the last few years. What that's led to is a lot of social isolation in the community. So for me, community is about recognising that people are in different places. There's a lot of new housing where I live, and people are moving in because it's close to the motorway. So they've got a bit more disposable income, they've got jobs. But the historic community is still suffering. So it's about recognising that that community might need a bit of support to re-engage. Otherwise there's pockets within the community that's left behind, and particularly the older generation that were quite wealthy when the mines were opened. But they've been dealing with a lot of long-term unemployment issues. So it's about how do you bring those people back into that community. So the challenge for me as a community worker is how do you do that?
I don't know about you guys, but I've never experienced a better type of community than when I was in trouble, or when my family was in trouble, or when I needed help, or when my mum needed help. So for example, when we were in Algeria and my mum needed to travel to outside of the capital where we were staying, I stayed at my grandmother's house with my auntie, and I was babysitting my little brother. And usually I would do this alone when I'm in England, so I felt like I had all of the responsibility on me, and I felt much more kind of that I had heavy things to do on my own without any support. But then when I was in my country, and I didn't feel like that. I didn't feel like there was this heavy burden placed on me because my family was there to take care of us. It was like I was being babysitted now by my family. So it was quite nice. But at the same time, it's why do we have to kind of be at the bottom of like the depths to feel that community, that sense of community? Why don't we raise issues, for example, when we're gossiping? Why don't we raise those type of community issues where, I don't know, maybe like your mom can be talking to her friend and she's gossiping about this neighbour of hers. Like, we have to remember that we're a community, not just when we're down, but when we're like in our happiest mood, when we're doing very well. So that's something I think that needs to be addressed, no matter how small the issue is that you're doing. Like, we have to stay community in both ends of the spectrum. So
I think one thing that definitely stands out for me in everyone's explanation of community is how community essentially seems to be a group of people gathered around a commonality. So it might be a locale, it might be family relations, there's something that ties us all together that makes us come together, and makes it interesting because in a digital age we can have a Instagram community where our set of friends on Instagram then become our community. We can have a Twitter community. We can have a Facebook community. We can have a podcast community. We can have like whatever brings us together. So we could have like a poetry scene community where we've got groups of people that we communicate with around a specific topic. And so I think that in our modern society and how technology is going, community is almost like blown wide open beyond just physical connection to anything that binds us together. So yeah, and I think another thing that has been picked out is that it can either be for good or for ill. And it's like, it then becomes down to the people who are involved to almost determine what this is for, what it's going to be used for.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I was just thinking, just to myself now, then could we come up with a formula of what would be a good community? Not that human beings are like, can be that simplified, like we're complex and it's hard to manage us, but then do you think we could come up with a formula of what makes a good cohesive community? Like I know they say like it takes like a whole village to raise a child. So like for me, when you were explaining about your community and problems that we face all over Britain really, and or whatever, like it's like it feels like we've all let them down. Like, you know, everyone is responsible. Like it's not like you can sit back and say part of a pocket of my community is suffering, but I'm okay. Therefore, I can just sit back. Say, this is the way I see community. It's just like the sum of all its parts. So like I don't know, is there like a formula for what would be a good community right now in 21st century Britain?
I think it's important to remember, even though you're part of a community and you try your best to help that community, it's also important to remember your own individuality. So to be the best that you can be to your community, you also have to be the best that you can be to yourself. And to be the best that you can be to yourself is to treat others how you would like to be treated. So just realizing that you are an individual who needs to be the best that you can be. That's how we can improve our community, just by going home and reflecting on how we are like and how we treat people, and how if I've treated someone bad today, if I've done something wrong, it's just reflection. I think that's what we need. We need reflection.
I also want to add another ingredient as reflection as well, because I agree with reflection. Another ingredient I would say would also be talking, discussion, talking with each other. And I'm not talking about on the phone, I'm not talking about even through social media. I mean like meeting up in a room and talking about issues in your life, not being afraid to open up. Do you know what I mean? Being afraid to open up will close doors. Do you know what I mean? So being confident to talk about what's going on in your life without feeling anxiety or any emotion or depressed, gaining trust, building trust amongst each other as well. You know, invite your neighbor in your house for a cup of tea. And talk about these issues, because you know, you get a next door neighbor, they could know each other, they see each other every day, they say hello, yeah, that's my neighbor, but do you know your neighbor? Would you lend your neighbor a broom or sugar or coffee? Do you know what I mean though? It's just
when you say come round for a cup of tea, you don't mean actually come round. It's just like more of a nice thing to say.
No, I mean literally.
Unfortunately, I'm saying.
Unfortunately, you'll just say it exactly. Just say
if they actually turned up and like knocked out unannounced, then you were like, oh my god.
Exactly. It's like that's what I feel like community should be like. You guys should like put everything down, put the technology down, whatever. Obviously, you can use it. You use it as a tool, obviously, because it is a powerful tool for communicating. But also just looking at each other in each other's eyes, genuine conversation. I feel like that's what really connects humans. Like. Technology connects humans, but just speaking to each other, like with your mouth, not just on the keyboard all the time. I think that's the best connection you can have with someone.
I guess like body language is non-verbal communication, so that forms a part of the connection that you have with someone. So you could be chatting to someone on. I would like to say that like use technology as beneficial as it is. So if the person's on the other side of the world and like physical contact isn't necessarily available, still utilize those things. But it's like, if you're talking to someone and their eyes start glazing over, you will notice that their eyes will start to glaze over. But if you're sending a text and a person's eyes are glazing over, you have no idea. And sometimes tonality and people's intention can be missed via electronic communication.
Yeah.
And so someone might say something in jest, and you might take it seriously and be offended by it, and that then becomes a barrier to communication. There's a phrase that says, the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And so, coming back to the initial point in terms of community, I would also add flourishing, working to ensure that everyone in the community flourishes, which includes yourself. So it's like working to ensure that, I've noticed that my neighbour hasn't put their bins back in front of their house. I'm going to help them out. Or they haven't pulled their bins out.
Right.
Knock on the door, is everything all right? You normally do that, but you haven't done that this week. Are you okay? And then just sort of looking out and ensuring that people within the community, like whatever community you have, are taken care of and are flourishing. So if like someone on Instagram is an avid, he posts regularly, and you're in that community, and he doesn't post for about 2 weeks, you're like, that's strange. You normally post every day. Send them a private message. Are you all right? You normally post every day. Like, is everything okay with you? Just to let them know that, like, I care about your well-being and I care about just you, and I want you to flourish and be who you are. And I've seen a difference in that, so I'm just trying to make sure that you're all right. I think we mentioned previously that there was a social experiment where someone had a video about them being kidnapped and stuff, and they just left messages, hope you're all right, and they didn't contact, some of them didn't contact them beyond that. And so it's like, not just doing it for show or empty comments and stuff, but actually taking time to care about that person's flourishing. And if everyone cares about each other's flourishing, then that builds a healthy community. There's another phrase where it says, if there's a group of 5 people and everyone's looking out for themselves, then at any given time you've only got one person looking out for you. But if everyone's looking out for each other, then at any given time you've got 4 people looking out for you. And so you're more covered than looking out for yourself. But that takes a community that's truly looking out for one another, rather than trying to be selfish.
I think also, to go back to both of your points actually, especially the one about your neighbour, I feel like, I don't know if it's London, but we're so closed off, like we're so scared to open up. Like, for example, in my country, in Algeria, in my town, whenever we see someone, like we're so openly, we just say hi, or like whenever we see that, I don't know, like a little cute child would like kiss them on the cheek or something. But here, if you did that, everyone would be like, what are you doing with my child? Do you know what I mean? But it's just that we're so open with each other, and that there's that level of trust there, that anyone you see, you just say hi to, and it's the level of open-mindedness there is really good, and the level of community is just way up there than what I would say compared to here. And like, here I only experience it in events such as, I don't know, like Eid or Christmas, when everyone is like super friendly with each other and just feeling that sense of community. But then on our everyday lives, when we're in an elevator with our neighbour, there's that awkwardness, and like it only takes a second to like open your mouth, say, hi, how's your week been? Like, you never know who your neighbour is. Like, I found out the other day, because I like acting, that my neighbour was in EastEnders, and he was giving me all these like advice about acting, sign up for this. We had like a mad 30-minute conversation about acting, and he was about to open the door to go to his house, and he was like bare standing, open the door, and he hasn't even gone in his house, and we were chatting for ages. So it's like, you never know who your next door neighbour is. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
We live in a culture where people are suspicious of other people.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you break that down?
Yeah.
How do you actually show people that you genuinely do care and want to make a difference? Because immediately you try something and people will think, what's the motivation here?
Yeah, exactly.
They haven't seen kindness, so they're on edge if they see it. Suspicion. And
there's a culture of suspicion. There is a culture of suspicion, and to shift the culture is not going to be something that happens overnight.
No.
It's like the dripping tap sort of thing, where you have to keep on knocking your head against the wall until it breaks down. And it's difficult. I know someone who offered to pay for another person's shopping, and the person was like, what are you doing? Don't pay for my shopping. And it's like, mate, you're about to get free food.
It's like what? Yeah.
Because they probably feel, what does he want out of
me?
What is he going to say now? What do I have to say?
What's your motivation? What's the motives here?
Or they think it's an insult. Like, I remember I was in, again in my country, I was in the tram or the bus or whatever. Basically a public transport thing. I don't know how to translate it in English. But we were talking to a pregnant lady, and we had pizza in our hand that we didn't like finish. We only ate like 2 slices, and this woman was like, it was really like obvious that she wanted some pizza. And then before we left, we just gave her the whole box of pizza, and then she was like very kind. She's like, "Oh, thank you so much." If I did that in England, mate, do you want a box of pizza? Get out of here! Like, do you know what I mean? Like, why are you giving me a box? It's so weird.
I think it's still part of the suffering. People don't want to be perceived to having the need for charity.
Yeah, exactly.
So people, there's a sense of pride, and people, I don't need your charity, but they do. I just don't know how to say I do.
Yeah. 100%.
I remember like when I was a kid, like I think with community it's missing that sense of wonder. When you're a kid, you don't really care who you're gonna play or who you're gonna hang around. As long as you're having fun and you have mutual interest, that's all that matters. I remember when I was a kid, like in my street, I would knock on anyone's door to play football or knock down gin. Like just run away and like
90-year-old.
There was actually an old lady that would live next door.
That's so funny.
She's like, it comes to me every week. Why did you get the message?
Without fail.
20 years too late. Yeah.
He's been doing it since he was 3 years old.
But yeah, that sense of like, you know, there's no insecurities, there's no if I do this, there's gonna be this. You just wanna like have fun. It's the sun is out, and time just goes because you're there with your mates and you make new friends. But as you get older, you get preoccupied with work, with commitment, status. You deal with problems. You suffer. Some cases, people suffer in silence, and they don't know how to ask for help and reach out to even their own family as well. And there's that sense of detachment. So it's interesting to see like that's how far like we're progressing as well. And like I was saying as well, like now there's like new forms of loneliness when it comes to not only just seniors that are lonely, but also young people that go through anxiety and depression. So it's interesting. What do you think we could do with young people, like to?
I think the first step is to like re-educate our children. Like I don't know who invented this idea that being rude or being basically mean is cool. Do you know what I mean? Especially these days, like my younger sister is in year 8, she's 13, and the definition of cool or popular is that mean girl. I don't know who came up with this idea, but like it's definitely to re-educate our children what it is what's important in their life and what kind of values and personalities and things that they need to have, because I think it's also in like a workplace as well sometimes, this idea that, you know, if you have like a certain superiority level or something, then you're automatically labelled as cool or, you know, do you know what I mean? So definitely re-educating children.
I definitely think education is just a great place to start because, like, I mean, we're sitting here now and recording this, and there's people from different backgrounds, different professions. So we can approach this differently depending on our respective work and our life experience. But like I think education is so key because I work with a lot of young people and I'm trying to, you know, speak to them and tell their stories. And mental health is such a big thing and it's recurring, but obviously it doesn't discriminate. You know, it affects a lot of adults. And I'm trying to have conversations and learn because it's not something I know too much about apart from just observing. But a lot of people just talk about medicating people or just, you know, how do we deal with this? And then, you know, at a stage where it's already too late to some extent. Not that there's, it's the end of the tunnel or anything and you have to give up, but like it's obviously a lot harder for us to intervene when it's someone who's already feeling any affliction or pain. So like education is so key. Like you look at a young person and depending on how they're molded by society, they can go in a couple of different directions. But I genuinely think people are very altruistic and they have an acute sense of justice and they care about the world, right? You take a couple of kids, very young kids, they will play with anyone, right? Maybe not Farah. No, I'm kidding.
That's so good. I'm not looking at your daughter.
No, he's talking about my daughter. No, but like a kid will never stop and say, oh, I don't like this kid, he looks different, or he's from this social background and I'm not going to play football with him. The kid just plays, right? So there's a certain point in our system where we've decided to say, no, just be more individualistic or see differences in other people, whatever they may be. And then it's just a shame that we're not harnessing the other side of our true nature. For me personally, in terms of the fact that we are part of one human family, and that so much more unifies us rather than separates us. So it's just like, how does education play a role with that? I don't know the answer, but I'd like to work with a system that is maybe looking at nurturing people and flourishing, like we mentioned.
I think this is where it gets political for me, because a lot of schools are not doing this sort of education. A lot of parents are not doing this because of the problems and the dysfunctional families. Historically, as a youth worker for 30 years, this is where it used to happen in youth clubs, in community centres. There used to be people there that could enable this to happen. Those have been gradually erased away, eroded away. And for me, we need to reinstate some of the good community-based youth programmes. Because that's where the education that's failing at home, it's failing in schools, this is where it needs to come from.
How bad would you say it is? Because I hear rumours, I'm involved in different community groups, but how bad do you think it is right now in terms
you look
of
at some of the northern towns, for example, the big cities, they will generally have more facilities and resources. You look at the rural communities that used to have some really thriving statutory-based youth provision, that has been taken away. It's the most obvious cuts. So you're dealing with a lot of teenage pregnancies, you're dealing with a lot of drugs issues, you're dealing with a lot of mental health and body image issues, and there's nobody there to support these young people. They can't turn, so they're turning to their friends who are giving them not good advice or not correct advice. And I think this is where the youth workers should be stepping in just to help, checking out, and giving them a bit of support.
I want to mention as well, definitely agree with everything that's been said. I feel like even the progression of technology is one that is focusing more on the individual. So when we were children, Sega Genesis? All Super Nintendo, all of them were multiplayer games. All of them were multiplayer, and so you needed people around you to be able to actually have a good game.
You had to plug in that controller.
You had to plug in that controller.
You had to give it to your friend.
So my first experience with video games was a community experience where a whole bunch of us would go to a neighbour's house, play the games. When you get beaten, get off it. Next person comes and starts playing.
It was still as if it was a board game, a group activity.
Now, I struggle to find two-player games. Everything is playing online, so it's removed the physical person there. So it's like almost technology has removed the need for physical people around you. I don't need you guys around me. Arguably, because I can just text you.
For me, this is another example of social isolation. Young people are locking themselves into a bedroom.
And also the manufacturers of these companies are capitalising on loneliness, right? The gaming industry is it grosses more than the music and film industry combined. So why are we letting these companies exploit this loneliness?
And it's just the content that they're being exposed to. So I know, primary school kids who are playing Call of Duty and GTA. Now these games are 18. You're in primary. You're not even 11 yet, but you still have access to this. Now that speaks into parents buying these games and how are they getting access to this. But the content they're being exposed to from that young age is desensitizing them to certain things and it's making them feel certain ways. So I also think in parallel to education, there should be breaking down boundaries of isolation, where as was mentioned initially, there's this culture of trolling, where if I can put you down, if I can troll you, then obviously everyone's gonna laugh. I'm gonna be seen as that guy. I've just made this and it's if I'm sitting in front of the person I'm trolling and I'm seeing their emotion, I don't think you'll be able to troll people for that long. Seeing the hurt on people's faces, unless you're sadistic or something, you won't be able to.
We were just share about this new slang, the pressures for this new slang that you heard from your younger siblings.
Which one was it?
About the branding.
Oh yeah, so it was what we were talking about earlier. So this is another form of putting people down. Is whenever my sister comes to me, because I encourage her to tell me everything that happens. I don't she doesn't tell my mom, but she comes to me and tells me because I understand. And she comes to me and then she tells me what's going on and these new words that are coming up in her class. And then one day she mentioned something about branded, and I was like, what does that mean? She was like, you know, branded clothes like Nike and Puma and Adidas, and like her friend, they were talking about clothes and stuff, and then her friend was like, oh, that's not branded. Oh, like, so you're not wearing designer kind of things. And I was like, first of all, the level of cringiness of these 12, 13-year-olds using these kind of languages, yeah. Second of all, they're so young and they're already putting people down. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I said about re-educating the youth and that.
It's like if you were in a room with someone who wasn't quote unquote branded, and their mum was right behind them, you can see that mum's working 3 jobs just to make sure that this person can eat.
There's a food bank. There are food banks right now, right?
Literally, and it's like clothes. You got clothes. That's good. You know, that's good.
Yeah.
So I think like when people actually realize that these are real experiences, for some people it's not a choice. It's like it's what they have is actually a luxury. And I think actually breaking into people's spaces and seeing lives and seeing experiences, as well as being educated into like healthy relationships, healthy way of interacting with people, healthy way of just engaging with people, will go a long way. It will go a long way. As was mentioned, the schools are on. We can't rely on the schools to do these things because they're already stripping out creative subjects to focus more on the hardcore maths, science, English, history. Like the quote-unquote hard subjects and the soft ones are just being left aside. When we know that students with special educational needs sometimes thrive within these creative environments and not necessarily within, not all of them anyways, but some of them thrive. And for that to be cut, you're just stifling this person's growth. They have 2 hours of music and like 15 hours of maths. Come on.
And the same thing happens with working single moms or single parents. What they tend to do is, what I've seen is like they work 2-3 jobs like you mentioned, and then the kid would come from school, will go home, they've got no adult supervision. If the youth clubs are closed, they've got nowhere to go. So who are their role models? Who are they looking up to? It's the negative influences. And then it creates that mentality of like, I want to make money, I want to get that brand, I want to get this. And the mother or the father is trying their best to pay for the bills, to make sure the kid does well in school. The kid doesn't know what meaning of work is. All they know is like, if I do this and this for that person, I'll get an easy way out. What happens? I've dealt with mothers and say, I've tried to talk to my son, he won't listen. I've done this, he won't listen. And then what happens? The kid either goes to prison or gets in trouble or gets worse. And it's like that thing you said about being neighbor, being able to jump in and help out your neighbor. Say, hey, you know what? That kid is going off track. What can I do to help?
Just, suicide is everywhere. If you can't check in with your neighbor, then it's going to be too late one day.
But also also not as far as to, like, there's a level of privacy, especially within like these communities. Like, there needs to be like a level of privacy that needs to be respected. Like, sometimes mind your own business. When it comes to like, obviously, like, you know what I'm talking about.
Boundaries.
Boundaries. How
basically she's saying don't come around the house with a cup of tea.
No. I'm saying stop asking questions like, how comes you're not married yet? Things like that.
There's a level to it. There's a level to it that you have to respect, of course. As you said, being intrusive. Just make sure when you do approach your neighbor, it's not anything that's too personal, but it shows that you care. That has to be on your mind, that you care about them. You have to come with that mentality, not trying to get stuff out of them, or not being nosy, but actually showing genuine compassion and caring that that person, you care about that person as much as a member of your family, maybe, or a cousin, or do you know what I mean? You're looking out for them the same way you look out for your cousin or look out for your. You know what I mean?
One thing that it's depending on your view, you might frown on this, but it's like when I was growing up in Ghana, the cultural norm was that if you were out and you were in your community doing something bad and your neighbors saw you, your neighbor will beat you. Your neighbor will beat you, take you home, tell your mom that I beat him for doing this, and then your mom will be like, wait, So your neighbor had to beat you because you're doing this. So you're trying to embarrass me in public. Get beat again.
and if your cousins or uncles find out, they get
Yeah,
it's like a wrestling match.
We're saying, how do we beat someone with love? In a
Yeah.
UK setting.
Exactly,
Quote me
yeah.
on
No,
that,
it's the
but-
concept.
It's a concept. It's a concept where like within the community, everyone is taking
Yeah,
responsibility.
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
In principle,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
essence of that idea of
Yeah.
responsibility.
Everyone is
Sure,
taking
sure.
responsibility for everyone in the community.
Yeah.
And so we've seen that this person is like, so there's a 5-year-old, 11-year-old smoking in the park. I'm not just going to walk past and say, oh, your mum shouldn't let you do that. But as part of that community, actually be able to speak to her and say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Does your mum know that you're doing this? Let's go home to your mum and see if she knows about this.
Right now, it's very fragmented, and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that kid. I know he would
Yeah.
never surmount to
Yeah.
anything. So who gives a crap?"
Yeah.
Like, but
Yeah.
if that kid's not doing well, you're not going to do well, right? So you should always have a vested interest for the right reasons and
Yeah.
everyone's
Yeah.
welfare.
It's that concept of, do you know, like when you argue with your brother or your sister, and then you're angry at them, but then at the end of the day you're like, oh, it's okay, we're gonna get back, we're gonna be okay because he's my brother, he's
Yeah,
my
yeah,
sister.
yeah.
It's like, why can't we be like that with like other people in our community? Like when we fight with someone, when we get into an argument, why can't we have that same level of, like that same idea that we need to solve this because we could be at a greater level that we are at, because then we are at. And it's what Joe Cox said, there are, what's that quote? We have more in common than the things that divides us. And I think that speaks for like,
Yeah, that's a strong.
yeah.
That's quite a good point to make.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point to end our
Yes.
conversation on as well.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
ScribersHive Europe in the place.
Yes.
Banter!
Thank you, everyone. I'll see you at the next episode.